A very good morning to you on this Monday morning. It is a wonderful Monday, the 24th of March, and about 6 or 7 days to payday, which should rejoice some hearts. But we continue right along this morning in our talking through the storyline of the sermon that was written up as a letter. It is in letter form, and it is written to Christian Hebrews. There's every indication that these were converts to the way. They became followers of the way out of Judaism. They were Hebrews, and they have embraced Christ as king, but they stand in great danger of falling away, of defection. And so in our last episode, we talked about the importance of decontaminating sacred space. In the Old Testament, the tabernacle and the tent was the sacred space. And in the New Testament, believers, followers of the way, are the sacred space. And so the writer is tracking the importance of being in line and being in harmony with what is considered to be the way. And so we see that the operative principle in this section of the text, verse 18 to 22 of chapter 9, has to do with Jesus. He was the one whom the writer affirms that he has opened up a new and living way by his blood. Because when Moses took the blood of calves together with water and crimson wool and sprigs of hyssop, and he sprinkled the book of the law and the people and the tabernacle and all the cultic vessels, and he sprinkled it with blood, everything was purged. It was cleansed. It was decontaminated. Because according to the law and without the application of the blood, there was no definitive purgation. And so one has to constantly be thinking back to the book of Leviticus, to what the writer is on about, because the Day of Atonement was the reset button. The Day of Atonement was, as it were, where everything went back to zero. The high priest goes into the Holy of Holies. The priests go in continually as the people commit sins of omission. The high priest goes in once a year, but the priests have access all the time, continually, into the holy place. And so for 21st century readers, we may be drawn to the fact that the minutiae surrounding the tent, the tabernacle, the Holy of Holies, and all the ritual cleansings, this minutiae becomes quite boring. But yet the writer shows a deep connection with the mental architecture of the Hebrew people. And it's around that connection that he makes his comments about pressing on and not going back. Jesus is the superordinate Son. He's the superordinate walk, and he's the superordinate way. As a result, these believers needed to continue to ultimately care about Christ, because that's what faith is. It is ultimately what you care about, the ultimate thing, And in this case, it is Jesus, Messiah. And so while objects needed to be decontaminated and cleansed of any filth or contamination, whether it was accidental and typical, uh, that of course would defile sacred space. And so in this part of the text, in verse 18, it says, therefore, not even the first covenant was inaugurated or opened up or started without blood. For when every commandment of the law had been declared by Moses to all the people, he took the blood of calves and goats with water and scarlet wool and hyssop, and sprinkled both the book itself and all the people, saying, this is the blood of the covenant that God commanded for you. Because you see, it was personal voluntary sacrifice that became the point of convergence between the transcendent and the immanent. Heaven comes down and heaven touches earth and, in a sense, provides the ultimate point of convergence between God and man. And so that we are challenged as we take up our cross. There is convergence between heaven and earth. Transcendence and immanence take hands. And as they converge in doing that, something wonderfully unique happens and happened at the cross and happens as a result of the cross when you and I take up our cross and follow him, because the cross speaks of death. And death is not escape, but death provides you an entry point, an entering into a deeper capacity for processing reality. You see, for the most, death and dying is getting out of here and not tasting of any of the things of life. And while that is true, there is a deeper significance for believers on a moment-by-moment basis. It's not escape from, but entry into a capacity which gives you a deeper way, a deeper capacity for processing reality, for processing what is real. And so it's not about escapism or the escaping of feeling or emotion or desire, as some positions would have us think. But it is really the way which is Christ gets you to enter into a deeper encounter, a more significant, real encounter with what reality throws. So that truth has to do with living in fidelity to the flow of reality and to experience the transcendent in a deeper and more purposeful way is going to require death and dying. And that's why it says in verse 21, and in the same way, the high priest sprinkled with the blood both the tent and all the vessels used in worship. Indeed, under the law, almost everything is purified with blood. And without the shedding of blood, there is no removal of sin. There is a reminder because our consciences have been cleansed, right, from anything that contaminates rather. And so we have a wonderful reminder, as we are told, our consciences have been cleansed from defilement so that we can experience what the removal of contamination is all about. There is now forgiveness of sins, for without the shedding of blood, there is no remission of sin. And so this morning, as we think about this operative principle, we need to think about and talk about what kind of contamination are we carrying? What are you carrying? What are you a carrier of this morning that contaminates you? That is contaminating you as sacred space. You're not a Hebrew Christian. You come out of a Gentile stock, and God has brought you into his family because you have trusted Christ, because it was through the foolishness of preaching for God to save them. It pleased him through the foolishness of preaching to save them that believe. So those who get saved, who become Christians, are those who believe. Election is to service. Election is not to salvation. And so it's important to understand that through the foolishness of preaching, God saves them that believe. So what needs to be done in your case if you've been contaminated? Because sin contaminates. Sin is what defiles sacred space. And God takes care of the issue because of Christ and brings us into close proximity. The proximal zone is Calvary, because at Calvary, something unique happens. Contamination is taken care of. It is finished. What is finished? No more blood sacrifices. The blood of bulls and goats are applicable or can atone or can make a way through sin and sinfulness, except the blood of Christ, which inaugurates a freshly slaughtered way, if you will, into the very Holy of Holies, into the throne room of God. And so that as I, as a believer, come to God, I become deeply aware of what contaminates and what brings about contamination, because secret sin is what contaminates. As we've said before, secret sin on the earth is open scandal in heaven. And God desires cleanness. God desires decontaminated space. So as you come to him and acknowledge that he has taken up his residence in you, it's only decontaminated space that will make contact with him possible. So where do you posture this morning in terms of decontamination? It's a Monday morning. It's the first day of a work week for most and for many. And as we get into this Monday morning, let's get into it with great thankfulness and a great appreciation for what he has done. He has brought us into close proximity to himself. I don't have to take flight or fright or freeze or fawn. I can openly and willingly and joyfully enter his gates with thanksgiving in my heart. And so let's be grateful this morning for what he has done in terms of providing us with a way as we go into this week. I trust that you have been encouraged, your heart has been challenged as you go with God. Have a good day.